Imagine boarding a flight with your airline, only to be treated like you don't belong by your own staff. That's exactly what happened to an undercover airline owner who decided to experience his company's service firsthand. Dressed like any other passenger, he'd blended in, expecting to see the airline from a customer's perspective. But what he didn't expect was a rude and dismissive flight attendant who insulted him right from the start. As the flight continued, the situation escalated, leaving the owner shocked by the lack of professionalism. Little did the flight attendant know, the man she was looking down on wasn't just any passenger. 7 minutes later, karma struck in a way no one on board saw coming. What happened next turned the entire flight upside down and left everyone, including the rude attendant, stunned. Stay tuned to see how this unforgettable story unfolded. The flight attendant's attitude didn't just stop at a single rude remark. Throughout the flight, she continued to make snide comments and displayed obvious favoritism toward other passengers, ignoring the man completely. The owner, calm but observant, watched as she delivered smiles to some and scowls to others. He noticed her lack of patience with anyone who asked for assistance and how she rolled her eyes when passengers made simple requests. What made it even more frustrating was the stark contrast between her behavior and the airline's training standards, something the owner had personally overseen. Every detail felt like a betrayal of the values he had worked hard to build. Meanwhile, passengers around him started noticing her behavior too. Whispers of discontent rippled through the cabin, creating an uneasy tension. Still, no one suspected the man she was mistreating held the power to change everything. He silently waited, letting the scene play out. As the flight continued, the tension between the flight attendant and the undercover owner became harder to ignore. Each time he pressed the call button for assistance, she either pretended not to see it or took an unusually long time to respond. When she finally did, her tone was sharp and dismissive, as if helping him was an inconvenience. Meanwhile, other passengers began sharing their own frustrations. A young mother struggled to get water for her crying baby, only to be brushed off with a curt response. An elderly man who needed help with his luggage was ignored entirely. The owner couldn't believe what he was witnessing. This wasn't the airline he had envisioned or the experience his customers deserved. Still, he remained quiet, observing how the crew handled these situations. He noticed the genuine frustration on passengers' faces, but the flight attendant seemed completely unfazed, her arrogance growing with each passing moment. The turning point came when the flight attendant openly mocked the undercover owner in front of nearby passengers. He had politely asked for clarification about a meal option, only to be met with a sarcastic comment loud enough for others to hear. A few passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, while others shook their heads, clearly annoyed by her behavior. The man remained calm, but inside, the tension was building. As the plane reached cruising altitude, her attitude continued to spiral. A passenger in first class accidentally spilled a drink, and instead of helping, she snapped at him, blaming him for the mess. The murmurs from the cabin grew louder, and it was becoming harder to ignore the discontent spreading among the passengers. The undercover owner knew it was time to step in. He glanced at his watch, calculating the perfect moment to reveal the truth, knowing it would send shockwaves through the cabin. Just as the undercover owner prepared to step in, an unexpected announcement crackled through the cabin. A senior flight attendant from the crew addressed the passengers, apologizing for delays in service due to staffing challenges. It was a vague excuse, but it added fuel to the tension already simmering on board. The passengers, already frustrated by the treatment they'd received, began voicing their complaints louder. Amid the growing unrest, the rude flight attendant seemed completely unaffected, doubling down on her attitude. She barked orders at her colleagues, visibly annoying even her fellow crew members. One of them, a younger attendant, hesitated before quietly walking over to the undercover owner. She leaned in and whispered, "I'm so sorry for everything. We're not all like this." Her words were sincere, but hinted at deeper issues within the team. The owner nodded, his resolve strengthening. Unbeknownst to everyone, he was about to reveal a second twist no one saw coming. As the flight attendant continued her dismissive behavior, the undercover owner quietly stood up, walking toward the front of the cabin. Passengers watched curiously, sensing that something was about to happen. He calmly requested the intercom from the senior flight attendant, who hesitated for a moment before recognizing him. Her eyes widened, and she quickly handed it over, realizing the true identity of the man she had been working alongside. The owner's voice echoed through the cabin as he introduced himself, revealing he was the founder and CEO of the airline. Gasps rippled through the passengers, and the rude flight attendant froze, her face turning pale. He addressed the passengers first, apologizing for the poor experience and assuring them this was not the standard his airline upheld. Then, turning his attention to the crew, he praised those who had tried to make the flight better and firmly addressed the unacceptable behavior. But just when it seemed the moment was over, the senior flight attendant stepped forward, revealing that complaints about this particular crew member had been piling up for months. The rude attendant, now exposed, had no choice but to face the consequences on the spot. Passengers erupted in applause as the owner promised immediate action and vowed to personally oversee improvements. The flight continued with a renewed sense of professionalism, leaving everyone with an unforgettable story of justice and accountability. As the flight landed, the atmosphere had completely shifted. Passengers were chatting among themselves, relieved to have witnessed real accountability in action. The flight attendant who had been rude was quietly escorted off the plane, her position within the airline now under review. For the other crew members, the experience served as a reminder of the importance of professionalism and customer care. The undercover owner made sure to personally thank the passengers for their understanding and promised them that changes were on the way. His actions spoke louder than any corporate memo ever could. He had proven that no one is above scrutiny, especially not when it comes to the standards he had set for his airline. As the owner walked off the plane, he felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that his commitment to quality had prevailed. It was a powerful lesson. Good things and bad always come full circle.